Alright, everything moved into the garage as you can see. I still got 3 Harleys left. New ones are right off. There's our patient there. So I'm going to go over and mix up thin out the silver dope and go make a rig to hang that from while it's drying. And we'll get going on that. This is when everything shows up. The way you silver these things, you can see all the little defects. Of course, the wood grain is showing big time in this one because the primer wasn't worth shit. Being stubborn, I'm going to try it again, but yeah, that's my first coat of silver, and it's not looking too bad. A little lean spot there in the tip. But you can really see the wood grain sticking out on everything big time. Yeah, as I expected. I just spent an hour and a half sanding. As you can see, it's kind of patchy looking. I wasn't going to do this. I decided not to get fussy, and then I kind of got fussy, I guess. Had a few little spots. Next, of course, once you spray the silver on, all your uglies are going to show up. And filled in some nicks and dings, a few imperfections I found, and use the same thing, just use the talcum powder and dope mixture, which of course goes on over dope really well because it's pretty much just a dope base. So sanding around the hinges should turn out pretty good. It'll help things kind of give it a little more blended look. So in the end, redid some of these spots that were showing up, where I put that hardwood dowel in there for the guide, push rod guide, and I just found a few little spots I'd missed. Brodak seems to have a bunch of holes in their fuselage, and I'm assuming that's from holding it for when they cut it out. Probably get some tool that glomps onto it. So went all over it. And I think one of the biggest uglies I had was here. I think what I did is I rubbed too hard with the paper and I pushed into the balsa there. So I fixed that, and made this look a little better, I hope. Find out after I put the silver on. And for the most part, the silver dope sands really well. Really well. It's it's not going to fill in all the grain in the wood or anything. I've thought about giving it a couple of coats of sanding sealer, but not knowing really how SIG is going to react to Brodak dope, I decided not to. And besides, it reaches a point where she's just a solid balsa trainer, and I don't know, Brodak called for 5 coats of clear dope. I can see the airplane getting heavy, so I decided just to put a couple more coats of silver on and just fixing up. I'm still probably going to find a little problems in around here, but you can give her a couple of extra coats of silver in the area, and then later just buff them down with some 400. So what I'll probably do now, just give her another coat and buff her down with the 400. Something else I did I'd like to mention. This is the hole. I remember in the earlier video I kind of chamfered it a bit there in the bottom. Well, shortening up the landing gear, because the landing gear was full length, which would work good in the forward and aft forces that'll be on it. But cutting it in half is really going to make this act like a hinge, working its way, even though it's into the maple motor mount beam that runs right back here. It's still going to work it. So what I did was I drilled the hole out and I put a brass tube in there. I mentioned I was going to do that, and I actually did it. But when you do, make sure the tube is a little bit narrower. So again, where the 90-degree bend in the wire, it's of course not a perfect 90. So you know, like I showed earlier, I had the little chamfer there so it fit flush. Well, make sure your brass tube is just inside that. Otherwise you're going to run into the same little problem of a little hump there. Yeah, so it's about a 1/16 of an inch inside the hole on both sides. And that's something I forgot to do. Give it a little hit with some thin CA, and that'll stay in there forever. But that'll help prevent it from working the wood. The brass will hold up. Anyway, just I'll flatten my lips and get some spraying done here. Okay, there she is. Coat 2 of silver. It's not looking too bad. So you can still see the wood grain and stuff a bit, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. She's looking pretty good. I'm going to do another project after this. We'll do a half A. And we'll use the, and yeah, this is a good idea if you're spraying this stuff, to at least wear a dust mask. The clothespin ain't going to cut it from here. Okay, there she is, our last coat of silver. As I just showed you, I'm wearing a respirator. If you're going to spray this stuff, it's, I really recommend the respirator. I can't even smell it with this thing on, and the dope's got some pretty evil stuff in it. So anyway, there she is. It's the last coat of silver anyway. Now I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna paint the nose insignia blue with a stripe. I'm not sure how I'm gonna go about the trim. I'm gonna leave the silver as the base color. I'm not gonna do too much more. I'm not gonna get fancy with it, that's for sure. So I think I might actually get the blue on tonight. If I do, the only thing that'll be required after that's 2 or 3 coats of clear, and should be ready to assemble. Okay, that's the first coat. Using Brodak Insignia Blue. I'm hoping 2 coats will do it. It's looking like it's going to be 3. That's okay. You don't want to try to cover it all in one coat. All you're going to do is make a bunch of runs if you do that. And then this respirator is the way to go. Can't smell a thing, and it's a must. Well, it's 3 coats on her now. Looks like that should do it. I'll let that set up good. I'll take it in the house and give it a real good looking at. And the light there. And pretty sure that's got her though. Yeah, she looks good. Pretty nice shade of blue. Yeah, you might want to watch the angle you're holding. You're holding the airbrush when you're spraying, or where you're holding on to it. Yeah. I used Brodak Insignia Blue, and as you can see, I didn't get fancy with it. Just a kind of an old-fashioned style to it. I masked off the canopy here. I'm probably just going to leave it silver. And I ran the stripe up to the stabilizer, leaving the top blue. Thought I'd do something a little different. Leave the dorsal part of the vertical fin silver on the very top where it started, and just come up the side like I did there. It's a little odd looking in a way, but oh well, we'll call it unique. I don't know, probably see it a little bit in here. I pulled the tape off. The tape had 2 mistakes. One, I didn't have the tape pulled back flat on itself. I pulled it straight out. Mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was using tape that had too strong of an adhesive. So pulled a little strip off here and the other side. It's kind of annoyed, and it's okay, I have to get the airbrush out, but I decided to give it a little buff. And I'm using this small brush, and I'm getting the dope just inside the edge where the dope lifted. And as you know, you don't want to get the dope outside the damaged area. Just try to keep it on the inside. And what I do is I put it in heavy with the brush, and then I make a pass along the outside edge, and it seems to keep it flush. And as it dries, most of the, especially with dope, as it dries, it seems like 3/4 of the stuff is gone in the air. So I gave it a little buff. I put the first one on last night, and you know, the wood will still suck it up a bit, but not too much. I gave it a light rub with some Warren 400. And I just went inside again. It's starting to disappear, and the silver is actually usually when you spray, the tint's a little different than when you brush, but the silver's pretty good. It's still wet, so you can it's standing out a bit there. I notice once it dries, you can hardly notice it. So I'm just gonna do that a couple of times. This airplane's been good for what not to do's and how to fix groaners. the biggest one when I dropped it, which is why it's all silver and blue now. She turned out pretty nice with that color scheme, actually. Even my wife likes it. So, yeah, women are good with colors and shit. Well, we're finally at the final step. I'm gonna put the clear to her. Second coat. Finished. The spraying is finally finished. I just better talk a little louder because asking where she is. In all her glory. Man, what a haze in here. Definitely want to wear a respirator in here. But, oh yeah. Bell crank seems to work best. Unfortunately, the push rod's going to rub a bit. I put a slight bend in it, trying to keep it off that plywood plate. But, maybe if I had the guide a little lower, I don't know. But it is what it is, I guess. And I used all of Brodak's parts here. This is the very wobbly lead out guides, single strand wire, something I'm not used to using, but I shouldn't say that, I guess, but I'm playing this size. I set the bell crank up. The best way this seems to work is the way it shows on the plans, not in the instruction book. So you get that step facing down, push rod coming up underneath, and then of course your washer and bushing, thick part of the bushing on the bottom. All the screws, I used blue Loctite on all these nuts. There's the guide. That's kind of neat, soldering the washer on the head of a screw. And I used Brodak's retainer. All the hardware, including the screws on the engine, it's all Brodak. These wheels are Sullivan, and they're light foamy wheels. I had to put a brass bushing in there because they're too big for the landing gear wire, which is fine. I like to bush them up anyway. And balance is pretty much 1/4 inch from the leading edge, which is the 1/4 inch to 1.25 inches, I think is what the range is. And without the muffler, I had the muffler on. She goes nose heavy big time, naturally. I have to listen to this one bark. Can't find a tongue muffler for it anywhere. The other alternative is to stick another lead weight in the tail. And I don't much feel like doing that, so, or may try it again with a wooden prop. It's kind of a long nose critter. I might have been better off with a shorter nose and having the gear back here, something like this guy. Well, his gear is underneath the wing. But anyway, I'll get a shot of her all complete and take it from there. Call it done. Okay, there it is, much to my wife's dismay, on the living room table. Finished and ready for flying without a muffler. There, a shot with flowers. Get a good video of it now before he chased gophers with it. Look at the ringmaster. Oh, should fly good.